And we are live. Welcome to the stream. So, very, very special stream today because I'm joined by none other than the science nerd himself, Dr. Silk, from his channel. What's your channel called? Real Mr. Silk?
I have now good at conversations. That's what it's going to be. So
good stuff. Good stuff. So look, we've got some guys coming in now as we speak. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome. If you're watching this live, absolutely welcome to you guys. And anybody who's watching this live, as always, please put your questions into the chat because we are very keen to make this actionable for you guys. So answer any questions that you may have. Obviously, we're going to talk between ourselves as well, but ultimately, this is for you. So if there are questions that you've got with regard to sort of communication skills and basically dating strategy, right? But before we get into it, Michael, Mr. Silk, did you want to introduce yourself just in case people aren't aware of you or what it is that you do or, your sort of qualifications in this area?
Okay, so I used to be called Dr. Silk or Mr. Silk, and I have a degree, a postgraduate degree in communication, double degrees even. And what I am actually is a conversational expert when it comes to social settings. And what I have done is actually putting a lot of effort to take one of the best things out there in the communication faculty, theoretically, and make it into pure practical form. And that is what I've been working with extensively now with a lot of clients. And I'm also working with James Tusk and the Tusk team.
Nice.
As well.
So you basically have studied, maybe you could talk about your qualifications, but you've studied communication at a very high level in the academic arena.
Absolutely. And also the area of rhetoric. And what I could see actually is if you look at the theory of the communication from the communication faculty, we can actually see that there are so many elements there that have been used in the professional field, but not really in the field of social settings. And when I'm saying professional fields, I'm talking about psychotherapy. I'm talking about the area of journalism, negotiation, and so forth, where businesses and institutions have spent billions of dollars to evolve into this area. But when it comes to dating women, we haven't seen it at all. And when we look at conversations and communication in general, I used to put them in two categories. And if we're going to talk about conversations, we can have conversations with influence and we can have conversation without influence. Most people, they are not schooled in conversations, used to have a lot of conversations without any influence.
Yes.
And what do I mean with influence then, Troy? What do you think?
I don't know. I've got no idea. You've got no influence. So you want to have a conversation that actually gets you somewhere. You want to have a conversation that actually, influences the other person, right? That actually, if you've got an objective in this conversation, right? It's not just polite chit chat, right? You want something to happen as a result of this conversation. Okay. So if it's with a girl in a dating situation, there's a certain outcome that you've got in mind that you want. So how do you have that conversation in the most effective way? Not to manipulate, but just to sort of ensure that the conversation goes in the direction you want.
Okay, so there have been a lot of studies into this field, and I've done it a lot practically as well, together with, and also a lot of my students have applied my methodology and the methodology of true communication. And in order to influence a person, and in this case, a woman, we need to be able to make her feel something when we're having a conversation with her. Okay. And when she feels something, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so maybe before we go into all of this stuff, we should because obviously referring to the title here, because we're talking about the Science Nerd Destroys Troy on Bad Boy Dating Strategy. So that we were having this conversation behind the scenes before we decided to do this as a live stream. And so what fascinates me, right, is that there's this idea, And I say it's not just an idea. There's some, there's a lot of scientific backing for this idea that women are very attracted to these bad boys, these alpha bad boys, etc. Insert, your own descriptor into that. And I believe that a certain amount of spiciness in terms of the way that you come across is helpful. It seems to me that, if you're too placid and you're too passive and you're not very challenging, it kind of, there's a danger that you're going to bore the woman and she's not really going to respond very well to that. But I think your take on this is somewhat, well, I think we kind of agree on some of this, but your take is also somewhat different to this. So in terms of that, what do you think about, because we do hear women all the time say, don't we, saying, oh, I love bad boys. I don't know what it is. I can't help myself. I love the bad boys, blah, blah, blah. What you're suggesting is that actually, if you can use conversation in a certain way, you can get sort of onto a deeper level with these women. And that really is going to have the same effect. So what do you think about this whole bad boy mythology that goes around in this space?
Well, I mean, if we look at how men in general are communicating with women today, they don't have so much skill in the conversations itself. Their conversational strength is quite weak. And
Right.
if we're going to take two guys, where both have pretty weak conversational strength, we will see that the bad boy character still brings something on the table compared with the one that doesn't. Because the one who doesn't have those bad boy traits tend to be a passive listener and don't do anything, basically, more than just listen to her without any kind of engagement. They become really boring. And the bad boy, at least, he's trying to do something else, even though most of it is from a passive value perspective.
Yeah.
Or
and by the way, guys, any questions on this stuff, put your questions into the chat. If you've got any comments, anything that you want us to cover, please let us know. Just write the comments in the chat and we'll get to them. But yeah, so basically the guy who doesn't, if you take two guys and neither of them have particularly good conversation skills, but one of them is kind of a bad boy and he's got that vibe about him, that's going to draw her in more because at least there's something interesting about that dude, as opposed to the other guy who's just hasn't got conversation skills and is also quite boring.
Because I mean, most of the bad boys who is pretty skillful with women in general without having any proficient skills in communication, he will still what can I say, volume up the buying temperature, so there will still be some kind of entertainment which she will find quite amusing once in a while. But according to studies, we don't really see a true influence there. And if you're going to take, so from my perspective, if you're taking a competent conversationalist, yes, and he's going to do his thing, and then the bad boy will do his thing without having a proper communication skills or conversational strength, he will have no chance towards someone who is proficient in conversations without any questions. That is my standpoint. And there is a scientific based scientific evidence that supported my claim as well.
Indeed. Well, so we got a comment here from Roger Bampino who says prime women. So he means women in their prime fertility years, the most attractive women, whatever, want cheap thrills and cheap feelings. That's it. They're not interested in the high value template man until they're desperate and unwanted. Okay, well, look, there's a couple of things here because this high value man thing has been discussed quite a lot recently. I don't know if you've seen any of these shows. Rollo Tomasi was on Fresh and Fit with Destiny. I think you did. I think you saw that, didn't you? And this, because Rollo Tomasi made that tweet about a high value man, blah, blah, blah. And, and it included different points, including having a vasectomy, funnily enough, and which triggered a lot of people. But anyway, so this whole debate sort of came up around, okay, so what is a high value man? And it's quite an interesting debate, actually. But I mean, there's quite a lot to unpack here, isn't there? Because yes, women want cheap thrills. I mean, that's a slightly uncharitable way of putting it. I think what women want is emotions, right? They want their emotions triggered. I wouldn't necessarily say that's cheap. They want to feel some kind of emotional prompt from the guy, right? Now, the high value man template, I think he's talking about, oh, he's materially successful, he's got a nice car, he's got a nice house, blah blah blah. And I mean, there is some truth in the fact that they're more interested in those things when they get older and they're looking for more stability. But regardless, ultimately, in order to be attractive, the first bit of this, the what he calls cheap thrills and cheap feelings, but actually, really, we could just say emotions. That's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it? Because your conversational skill set evokes emotion in these women, right?
Absolutely. And it's not so easy to actually evoke those emotions within her if you don't know how to do it.
Well, what do you make of his comments specifically? I mean, do you think he's right, or do you think he's kind of?
I get this point. I get this point because I mean, when he says prime women want cheap thrills and cheap feelings, the first thing I connect that with is the person with some sort of a entertainment value, so he can actually entertain the girl in a certain sense. So we can actually take the entertainment value and put it in one category, and then we can actually measure how effective is it really in terms of attraction.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Because in that context, you could say, but what does entertainment actually mean? Because he's probably thinking it's just some guy and he's like, I don't know, flashing his fucking Bugatti keys or something like this on the yacht in Dubai. But he doesn't. But actually, getting into deep conversation or getting into deep empathy with a woman, that in itself is a form of what you could call entertainment. I mean, it's more than that, but it's triggering feelings in her, which is the really important thing here, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, now we're talking about a study. There's many studies out there, but we can take one. Yeah. We can talk about one study in particular from Harvard University, for example, one of the best universities in the world, if not the best. They came into the conclusion that if we can make the women to talk about themselves in a certain depth, neurotransmitters in the brain releases. And we're mainly talking about dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin. And when she have those release of those neurotransmitters, she is having the time of her life, basically. So even though you bring a guy that do have a lot of entertainment value, he can even fly around in the sky, and she will look at him and like, wow, that's impressive. That is still not going to release those neurotransmitters in the way that I describe here, which is talk about yourself in a certain depth. And that is something that I find really, really fascinating. So how to be able to talk with her in depth into the area where I used to call the whys. Well, you really need to be able to utilize certain empathetic tools and skills in order to be able to do that. It's nothing that people are born with and just have it within them. It is actually skills that have to be learned with strong intent. And
Okay, well, so Roger's come back with another comment now. Thanks, Roger, for you're keeping us afloat with your comments here. So anybody else, if you've got comments or questions, put them in the chat. We will get to them. But he says, I think men overthink everything about what women want. Women don't really overthink at all. They just enjoy the ride that the mysterious, bold guy comes along and throws on them. So what do you think about
that? Yeah, I believe that because what I can see here now, and my experience teaching a lot of students, both from Tusk, my own private clients, and also from you, Troy, is that when men overthink, they're doing it from a perspective of self-awareness, and that self-awareness is something that actually is a very, very negative force towards the men in the conversations, or if they want to engage with the conversation. So one of the most effective methods in order to overcome that is to shift attention from your self-awareness and towards the person you're talking with, in this case the woman, completely. You're going to give her your undivided attention completely, and that's helping so many men out there. Is just unbelievable, because as he says, everyone that want to engage a woman without having any proper framework in the conversation, they are very, very self-aware. Like, how do I look? How can I make her like me? What should I say? How can I make her laugh? And that is a very, very wrong way to go. So in the old way, the old methodology is to use instrumental language. But instrumental language is just an act.
What do you mean by
you.
What do you mean by instrumental language?
Instrumental language is pre-rehearsal of routines, pre-rehearsal.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's like learned sentences. It's like learned routines, learned game. To execute them in the best possible entertainment, in a way of entertainment. But that mess up with your nervous system if you're going to base your own confidence on that. That is toxic.
Indeed. I mean, one thing I'd say about this is I think that guys probably do overthink everything. I mean, you've got to remember, in the context of us doing this live stream, of course, we're overthinking it because that's kind of what we're here for. Like we're on a channel where we're talking about dating and we're talking about dating strategy. So it's sort of like, we're kind of being paid to overthink about it. I mean, I think in normal life, in normal life, guys probably still overthink it. And he's right that women don't think about it. They just enjoy the ride. That's absolutely correct. But the point is, women are quite fortunate for the most, not entirely, not every single woman, but for the most part, women are quite fortunate because if they are relatively attractive and they are pleasant and so on, and they go out socially, they're going to get approached by guys. So they don't have to really think about this. They don't have to think about this stuff because they're going to be, they probably get more guys than they can handle approaching them, guys sliding into their DMs, guys coming up to them at the bar, in the club, whatever, they're getting, so they don't have to overthink this stuff at all. Now, you shouldn't overthink it, but men do need to have men kind of have to know what they're doing more, don't they? Because we're the ones who have to do the approaching. So that's why channels like this exist. That's why we have conversations like this, because for, whether you like it or not, if a dude doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, then he's just not going to get the right traction, is he, in this dating marketplace?
No, I absolutely agree with you. And there is some value of what Roger is saying here. It's like, he says, like, they just enjoy the ride with the mysterious bold guy comes along and throw them on. Yeah. And he's sort of right in this case. But the fun thing is, the women, I thought we men, or men in general, are thinking that women, thinks a lot before we even approach them. So before we approach a girl, they believe that, the woman is judging me immediately. The woman look at me and she already have a predetermined mindset about me, and she probably saw me before. She probably saw me sitting there before, and a lot of this limited beliefs of she being super aware of things. The truth is, women don't think so much at all until you're coming in and having a true interaction with her. And I've seen this so many times that once you go in and starting interaction with the girl, it's not until then she just going to open her eyes and her mind to see what you have to offer, basically. And what do I mean with have to offer? Is basically how you can make her feel. And she's not thinking about it consciously. It's like in her subconscious mind of, okay, so what is my feel about this guy? That's the only thing they're thinking about.
Yeah. So we don't, so the point is that women don't overthink it, but they generally, they don't have to, really. You say, they get swept along by the men because they're very emotional creatures, and that's fine, but it's our job to think, okay, so how am I going to do the sweeping along? How am I going to be that guy that is the bold, mysterious dude? And the problem is that most guys aren't that guy. Some guys are lucky and they're kind of naturals, but for the most part, most guys aren't that dude, which is the whole basis of what we are teaching, why we're having this conversation, to try to give you some pointers about how to become that dude who's going to be successful in the dating marketplace. So Max also Max says, if you haven't got enough time to talk with a woman, but you want her number, is the best cold approach in that situation a simple, can I have your number? I thought you looked great. Well, I wouldn't quite put it like that. I would more, this is just me. I'm sure maybe Michael disagrees. I would probably say, hey, listen, I just saw you look really cute. I know that you're running to get the train, or I've got to just run into that meeting in right now, but I had to come up and take my shot. How about we exchange numbers and I'll shoot you a message? And I would just go for something like that. Like I always tell clients, if it's genuinely a situation where you really haven't got time, you might as well just go for broke, because if you get the contact details, you're in with a chance. You know, if you leave without contact details, then there's no chance of anything happening. So you might as well try. I wouldn't put it exactly like this, but yes, you may as well try. But I don't know, Michael, what your thoughts on this would be. Maybe you wouldn't even bother, because if you haven't got the time to
I mean,
generate.
okay, so if we're talking about not enough time, or we're talking about 20 seconds here, or we're talking about 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but let's say that you only have a window of 2.5 minutes, yeah?
Yeah.
So I would do the same thing. I would just go and say, excuse me, I know this is spontaneous, but I saw you and I had to come and say hi. I'm Michael. What is your name? And then she would say, okay, my name is Vanessa. I can definitely say that she's in rush. What I want to do is I want to put some empathy in the conversations directly after. And that will be like, I want her to tell me what you think about things very quickly about something. And once she's answering that question, I would immediately look for keywords, see clarification on one keyword, and she will just reply to me quite fast. And then I will use some very, very short empathetic tools, and then say, you know what, I know that you're in rush. Let's go for coffee one day. I like the way you think there. And then you exchange numbers. So I want to inject some empathy into it. But if there is no time for that either, if you don't have that minute to do it, then there's no other chance than just saying what you just said. I think it'd be great.
Just go for broke, really. You give it a shot. Just say, hey, I had to take my shot. You look really cute. Let's exchange numbers, and I'll drop you a message when you're free. And then you can maybe build something up on via message, or you can maybe get on a video call with her, which can work quite well sometimes. So yeah, I mean, definitely, it's better to try and leave with something rather than nothing. But like you said, the ideal, even if you've got a couple of minutes, is to try to sort of, as you say, inject some empathy, or to sort of generate some empathy here, right?
Yeah, because we want her to start think about something. So when she wants to tell you what you think about things, we know from science that something is triggered in her brain. Yeah, and we want that chemical reactions in the brain. That's what we want. So even if it's a very small part of it, it's still something. But if you're going to go, if you have time for it, go for it, because I think that part will be much stronger than not doing it. But if you don't have time to do it, then you don't have any other choice then. But yeah.
So let's just restate that, because I think this is a really, really key in terms of your teachings. What you're saying basically is that, or one thing that you say a lot is that when a woman tells you what she thinks about something, when she reveals that to you, that then she's getting triggered on a deeper level in terms of dopamine and these other these responses in the mind. So that's a super key thing to do, right?
Absolutely. And it also challenging her, because most of the time we can only ask questions in the level one depth. If we're going to put the depth of the conversation in different levels, most of the guys can only ask questions. They're just going to lead to answers in level in level one area. But if you go down to one step further, you're going down to the level 2 area. That is when she start think.
Yes.
And once you start think, something happening when she's talking about it. But if I'm going to ask her, so for example, what do you think about Warsaw? And she just said, oh, I think it's beautiful. I think it's exciting. I like to be here. That doesn't trigger that much. It's not until you're taking that part into depth with things happening. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So for example, just to illustrate an example, she just said, I like it. She said excited. She said beautiful. I just want to play with it. I'll take exciting. I will say, you know what? When you say exciting, what do you actually mean with that? And then you just dead quiet. Now, whatever comes from her mouth is liquid gold. Now she starts thinking about what she actually mean with exciting. Not this automatic response system telling her what to say automatically. Now she cannot do that. She has to define pretty concrete about what she mean. And that is the key of how to influence the girl, because it's not until then things happening in the brain.
Okay, so her actually defining what she thinks about this thing, that is the thing that creates this spark, right?
Yeah. In conjunction that she's telling you about it. Oh,
okay.
What I actually mean is X, Y, and Z, and that is super powerful. Yeah.
And this is an insight that you've gained from there are scientific papers that back this up and that demonstrate this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the papers I've been reading is from my own university, but also from Harvard University, because they are the best in the world when it comes to to research human behavior.
Yeah.
So and I've been talking to a lot of human behavior scientists, and everyone basically agree about the same thing here.
So this is the key. This is the gold that you guys are getting watching this, because this is something that never really gets talked about on any other dating channels, is it? This very specific insight, which is get her to tell you what she thinks about things, get her to open up to you in terms of what she feels and thinks about individual topics. That is the magic secret sauce here that's going to get her hooked, or it's going to get her at least, keen to spend more time with you, right? Because she's going to enjoy the feelings that she gets when she's with you.
Absolutely, because there are two ways that I used to divide it. It's like, as a person, it's like, one is the passive value thing, how you look, how you dress, how she pursue you in the first glance.
Yes,
that's the first thing. But that doesn't make that has nothing to do with how you make her feel, how that person make her feel. So how that person make her feel comes through the conversation and the conversational strength that you have.
Okay. Yeah.
You see, so just by looking good and being this high status man with a lot of money and a certain look, that part doesn't influence her in terms of how she feel about that person. You see,
yes.
The only way to influence her is by open up and start a conversation with her. That is how you influence her.
Which is why conversation skills are so important, because even if you've got a Bugatti, or even if you've got like a Lambo, or whatever it is, right, you're still ultimately going to have a conversation with her, and that's where that's where the influence happens. But Jay, who's a regular commentator to the commenter on the stream, who seems to be sort of stuck in about 1950 or something, says it's all about chemistry. You have poor Pookie Ray Rays, which is a term I'm not familiar with. Deadbeat men who still deadbeat men who still conquer the love of many women. They don't know game, but they get girls. And then he says chemistry and looks at times beats game. So the thing with this is, right, and Jay, as much as I love your contributions, the issue here is that yes, it is all about chemistry, but chemistry is game. I mean, game. If you wanted to define game, it is, okay, so how do I generate chemistry with this woman that I've just met? Okay, and that's exactly what Michael is... Sorry, I point the wrong way. That's exactly what Michael is teaching. Like what you're teaching, Michael, really, let's leave... what's the other bit here? He talks about looks. Okay, leaving looks to one side. But what you're teaching here, really, is how to... is a shortcut to generating chemistry, right?
Absolutely. It's all about chemistry.
Yeah, and chemistry is game. Game really is, and everybody. And I know that you don't agree with the methodology of some of the older, the pickup guys or whatever, right? Fair enough. But everybody really has been searching for the golden key, which is, okay, what do I do in order to generate chemistry? That's what game is, right?
Absolutely, it is, for sure. And I think that the only faculty that have the answer of that is those scientists that studying human behavior.
Yes.
The communications experts, psychologists, and those together making very, very powerful papers that can support certain claim. And then it's up to us to take the best theory and make it practical.
So yeah, exactly. But I agree. So I agree with him that some of these guys may not know game, but they get girls. Well, okay, fine. They may not know. They may not know game. They may not be subscribed to, the Troy Francis YouTube channel. And why the fuck aren't they if they're not? That's outrageous. But, they may not, but probably somehow naturally they've acquired the skill set. But for most of us who don't have it naturally, it's something that needs to be learned. Okay. So he says, all right, so what do you think about this, Silk? So sorry, I'm going to jump ahead because he's come back. Chemistry is not game. Chemistry is connection. You either click with a woman or not. All right. So what do you think about that? Do you agree?
So it depends on what you define game, but let's say that the right communication tools or the right conversational framework is a game. Yeah, then chemistry is a game.
Well, okay. What about the final part? You either click with a woman or not. Do you agree with that? Like basically, if I go to the mall in Warsaw and I talk to a girl I talk to say 10 girls. Is it just a matter of do I click with her or not? Do you agree with that?
Not really, but I mean, men and women works differently in terms of how we pursue attraction. I mean, okay, we feel attraction probably in pretty much the same way, but the route to that attraction is completely different. While men are because he says here, you either click with the woman or not. And I mean, because you either click with the woman or not, then we're coming from our own perspective as men, and we click with the woman many times based on her appearance, because we are very visual beings. There are so many studies out there, but the opposite though doesn't work the same way, and that is what the men got wrong. They thinking that how I see a girl and find her attractive is probably the same way the round. Like, this is probably how the girl would look at me in the same way, and that is actually a misconception, I believe.
I mean,
very strongly.
I would fundamentally disagree with. I mean, I agree. Okay, I agree that there are some people that you click with more than others. That is true.
Mm.
And also the other thing as well is that there are just going to be a bunch of women who are just non-available. You know, like they're just like they're engaged, they've got a boyfriend, they're whatever. You know, they're not interested in dating, whatever. Right? There's going to be a bunch of women who are just not available. So okay, fine. But when you say you either click with her or not, whether you click with her or not partly depends on what you say to her and what you do when you walk up. So if I walk up to a woman and I go, I've got my head down, I'm not going eye contact, oh, hi, yeah. It's very unlikely I'm going to click with that woman because of the way that I've acted, because of what I've done, because of the things that I've said or not said. If I go up to her and approach her in a different way and say different things and maybe do, you know, what some of the things that you're teaching, is the likelihood that I'm going to click with her higher? Well, of course it is. So to say that you either just click with her or not, and you have no influence over it whatsoever, is obviously not true, because it's very, very clear that the things that you do in front of that woman are going to affect the outcome, right?
It's almost okay. So now I really, really get what I mean. So you either click with the woman or not. It's like it's almost like as you said, Troy. I mean, she can actually give you a chance to do something, as we noticed a lot of times. And if you don't manage to make a good impression, you will not click with her, or she will not click with you. And it's not going to be okay. So most of the time, it's not like she's looking at you for 1 second and then just, no, the chemistry is not there. She will give you a chance to see if there is any chemistry, you know, within that short interaction you have with her. So it's up to us to actually utilize the right methodology to make us, you know, interesting in order to get to that point of the chemistry thing. But the chemistry doesn't come that fast. It's not like this kind of thing. It can be, but if she give you a chance, the chemistry is not like that. Most of the time, it takes sort of some kind of conversation before you're getting there.
I think so. So here's my perspective on this. I think there's like, as always, there's kind of shades and there's nuances of this stuff. I think there are some people that you can just meet and, you know, for whatever reason, you know, it seems like there's more of an immediate connection. So that's one thing. I also think that there's plenty of women that you can meet, and whatever you do, it's probably just not gonna, you know, she's just not interested for whatever reason. So okay, putting them to one side. But and this is what we always say about game, or whatever you want to call it, is that the ones in the middle, it's very much dependent on, this is where the game is played, right? Because it's what you're doing effectively is seeking to create chemistry by the things that you say, by your body language, by your eye contacts, if you're using some touch and things like this. That's really what you're doing. And it does work, because I know for a fact that the number of women, when I started to learn about some of these things and I started to practice it and I started to become more proficient socially, magically, the number of women that I clicked with suddenly started to go up exponentially. Do you know what I mean? Well, is that just coincidence? Well, obviously not. It's because I'm doing different things. All right. So this is almost like a black pill argument, right? Really, it's just well, you know, there's nothing you can do. You're either click with her or not. So fuck you. You know, okay, fine. So let's not make an effort. It's just
exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah.
But it's just not true, because you know as well, don't you, Michael, from the students you've worked with, like the guys, you know, the Flying Dutchman and people like that. You know, like he wasn't clicking with many women.
Not at all.
Actually, he wasn't clicking with women, and then he worked with you, and then all of a sudden suddenly he's clicking with women. So clearly, it's influenced by one's behavior.
Absolutely, 100%. So yeah, I mean, influence is based on how you can make her feel about you, and if you want, and that part can only be within the conversation you're having with her. And if you're doing it right, you will for sure influence her to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a conversation at all, or you're doing it in the wrong way, you will not influence her, and therefore there's no chemistry.
And therefore there's no click. So, you know, this is what we're saying. Like, yes, there's an element of chemistry that I think is indefinable, and it is kind of maybe just natural. And some people, there might be some pheromonal basis. So I don't know what it is, right? There are some people that I've clicked with it very naturally, and it's happened more easily. But there's other women that, you know, it has been what I've done that has created that initial sort of connection, and then we've gone from there. So it's you know. Anyway, Max says, if you noticed a lady in a bar club giving you choosing signals, but she's with a pretty large group of men and women, what's the best way to muscle in and sit with them in order to pull the lady? Well, I think you were doing this in Novi Sad, weren't you, Michael?
I do that a lot, actually. So specifically when it's a lot of, you know, like mixed groups with a lot of men and women within that group, one of the most effective way is to go in with a question. And I used to like
would you talk to the whole group?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But that also depends on the situation. If there is a big group and she will sit on the edge, you can actually go and talk with her, just her. That's also possible. But if you have to engage the whole group, one of the most things, let's say there's a group of 2 girls and 2 men, for example, or let's say 3 men and 4 girls. Many times it's very hard to not interact with the whole group if you want to approach them sitting down, you know, at the bar. You have to engage everyone, and you're doing it easiest by being curious about their opinion about something.
Okay.
I will not, and it's a little bit different from the opinion openers that we had before. You're going to go there with a genuine opinion, and most of the time I'm going to use it when it comes to the place we are in. So that's one of the easiest way to get in. But in order to be able to have that conversational strength while you're doing it, you need to be able to listen, actively listen, and use a certain reflective listening skills in order to make something happen, for sure.
So you might go up to the group and say, "Hey guys, listen, I'm curious. What do you guys think of the venue tonight? Or what do you think of the music that they're playing in the venue?" Like, would it be something like that?
Yeah, or like, excuse me, guys. And specifically if you, because we were tourists in Novi Sad, but you have to be like very relevant to your own situation. So for example, like, hey guys, I have a quick question. Do you think that this is the best place in town, or do you prefer someone else? That is something I would go with. And as soon as they say something, you go directly to like, okay, but what makes that particular place better than here? But if there will be something that you like about this place, that you like this place better than over there, what would that be? And then you start bowling around with this one. But it has to come from a perspective of curiosity. So that's what I emphasize a lot, is that the whole interaction with women, from the approach, you know, start with the approach to engage a conversation with her, have to be from the base of curiosity. The power of curiosity is where the whole foundation is laying on.
So Max might then say, okay, so you've opened the group. So you've asked the group, you know, like what their opinion, you know, is this the best place in town, et cetera, et cetera. But what if there's one girl in that group that is the really attractive one that you want to, you know, get really the one you want to talk to? So what do you do then? How do you sort of get it so that you're talking to her, or that you've got a chance to make something happen with her specifically?
Okay, so most of the time, what's happening when you're opening a whole group of people, let's say 7 people, for example, someone that will be engaged in the conversation and someone that will be less engaged of the conversation. But there is a conversational tactic here, and that is that once you're asking a question about what a person think about things, you can either seek clarification on the keyword, or you don't. So for example, if I ask you, Troy, what do you think about Warsaw, and you say that I like Warsaw, it's nice. If I don't want to continue with the conversation with you, I will say, okay, cool. And how about you? And then the person that you're not really interested in at either, she will probably say the same thing. Yeah, but I also think it's nice. Okay. And how about you? And then now you're talking with the girl that you really like. And she says, yeah, I think it's really beautiful and I like it too. Yeah, but I'm curious. When you say I like it, what comes to your mind then? And now you start seeking clarity of what she's saying with that girl that you really like. You're using pretty superficial questions and answer with the other people on the group, but that particular girl, you're going to seek clarity of what she says. You're going to seek meaning in the words that are coming out from her mouth, and that is the beauty of it. That is going to select her from the other people of the group.
Yeah. Good stuff.
And many times it just flows in the way that those people in that group, unless it's a boyfriend or something, they will just leave you a little bit, and you start having a genuine conversation with them.
That often happens, because they can see that you're. Everyone's there to socialize. Once the group's opened and the group is, you've sort of been accepted into the group in a sense, and then you're talking to one particular woman in that group. They're just like, yeah, cool, whatever. We're here to socialize, fine. So they'll probably let you just continue with that. So Eric, who we were on a call with before, so good to see you in here, Eric. Says through conversations, can you demonstrate that you're with the bad boy topic? Through conversations, can you also demonstrate that you're a bad boy, or is that done with body language?
I mean, definitely. But I do believe that it has to come from the perspective of being genuine you.
Yes.
Nothing forced, but being genuine you. So if you have bad boy traits that you feel like, oh, but I really have them, then you can utilize them many times in the reflective listening part that comes in. But they have to come from the genuine you, for sure. Not trying to make some kind of a learned in push and pull or something like that. Forget about that kind of stuff. It's more if you have a bad boy trait that you might pursue, like that you feel you can utilize in a very natural sense in the conversation, you're doing it. But
to be fair, what about something like cocky funny, for example? So cocky funny is a buzzword that's been around since the beginning of time. Basically
David D'Angelo.
Yeah.
was it he invented it?
Yeah. But the thing is, I think cocky funny. And basically, for anyone who isn't aware of this phrase, it means what it says on the tin. Basically, you're kind of cocky, but you're also funny with it. So you've got a certain air of arrogance, or not, maybe narcissism, you could say, but you're also being quite funny. It's quite amusing. It's not super serious. Personally, I think and this actually is maybe getting to the heart of the topic here, because that's an example of what I would say is like a bad boy thing. It's not pretending to be part of a biker gang if you're not, or it's not, but you could be a little bit cocky, you can be a little bit arrogant, but in a sort of playful way. Now, I don't see why that can't be incorporated with what you're doing, Mr. Silk. So would you agree with that? Like you could be a little like she answers, she comes back with something. So you're talking about the reflective listening, but she, you might say, so what is it you like about Warsaw? And she's like, oh, it's, I like it's super fun here. What do you mean by fun? Oh, I mean this. And then you might come back in a cocky, funny way, mightn't you? But you're also then reflecting back. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And my clients and myself, I'm getting surprised many times of, wow, I didn't thought that I could be that, sort of cocky and playful. Because when I'm listening to the girl and I seek clarity of what she means, I seek the meaning of what she says. And she says something that threw me off the guard. Like, so what do you think about why, when you say beautiful, what do you actually mean? And she says something that actually caught off my guard. I can play with that. So that is when you naturally become cocky and funny, I think, because I believe that many people have it within them. Of course, there is a way of trying to learn, like if you see something funny, how to say that you think is funny, or you notice something about her that you find is a little bit off the chart a little bit, and how can I deliver that message to her? Yeah, you can actually start training in certain comments to say. That is fine, I think, to do that. But in general, it is just a plus. But I've seen so many of my clients not using anything of that at all. I was in the bootcamp with my other client. It was not Michael, but it was another guy that also was in the bootcamp. And he said that he using my methodology, or my using the real communication skills and the real conversational framework. And he said that he was just boring. He was just boring the entire date, he felt. And she was all over him. And she afterwards said that, you know what, I never met someone like you. I really, really like being with you, hanging around with you. But he was boring, he felt, but he was not a passive listener. He was still very active.
Yeah, because
he was an active listener using a lot of empathetic tools, tactics. Yeah.
Because your I think your position on this, you know, without, correct me if I'm wrong, without putting words in your mouth, but I think your sort of position on this is, if you are using these empathetic listening tools to get her to open up about herself and talk to you about what she thinks and feels about things, then that in itself is creating the spark within her. So it's not about you. You often say things, you often say it's not about, how do you put it? It's not about being interesting. It's about her being, interested in her. You know, that's
exactly. Yeah.
So I guess you'd be saying that on the surface, the guy can be sort of boring, because actually what he's doing is, because he's probing her in this way, he's actually eliciting the emotional response from her in a sort of different way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Because when you're coming into that depth, I never met anyone who's not super eager to tell you what you think about things. But you need to do it in that depth. If you ask her, for example, like, okay, so what do you think about Warsaw? And she said, oh, I think it's nice. Oh, cool. So what do you like to do in Warsaw? Oh, I like to play ping pong and eat ice cream. Oh, ice cream. I like it too. Oh, by the way, what are you studying? I mean, she's not eager to tell you a lot. She's not eager to answer you too much in those superficial questions if you don't seek meaning behind everything. So you need to just stop there. Don't go horizontally. You have to stop there and you have to go into depth. Because if she's saying something, for example, like, oh, I really like walking around in Warsaw. Yeah, but what does that mean exactly?
Yeah.
What does it mean? You don't know what that means. Find the meaning of what that means for her. And then there is another, there's other conversational areas that help us with extracting that kind of thing as well, like collaborative communication, where I said, like, you know what, I also like to walk around in Warsaw. I'm thinking about my health, enough steps, and I just have a peace of mind when I'm walking around. I really like it. But I'm curious, when you're walking around and you're going to see the value of walking around, what comes to your mind? I'm curious. And then she start thinking like, okay, why do I actually do it? You're going to engage her in the area of whys. It's not until then you're actually influencing the girl you're talking with, for sure.
Yeah. So we got some of the guys are almost getting towards the black pill in the comments here, but let's crack through a few.
Okay, go ahead.
So David says, do you calibrate your questions based on familiarity? My guess is no, but I don't know. What do you think about that? I don't quite know what he means.
Not really.
I mean, you're just asking, you're trying to understand how she feels about things, aren't you? So it's not really about...
No, it's more, it's because one thing that people think is like, it's not so much about how she feel about things, because the girl cannot really describe a feeling. It's more about what she thinks about things.
Okay.
That is actually indirectly connected with feelings, yeah?
Okay. So you don't really, it's not about familiarity, because you could have just met this girl, like literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, right. So then the one, I can't read that, but he says, if you're dealing with women aged 18 to, this is the first black pill comment. If you're dealing with women aged 18 to 23, all you need to do is treat them indifferent and look very handsome. Chemistry doesn't get a look in. So he's denying chemistry. So he's going against Jay. He's saying even chemistry doesn't matter. It's all about looks. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, but I mean, I get this point as well, because in order to create chemistry, you need to train this with intent. I mean, in order to have influential conversations with someone, it's nothing that you just are born with. It's not so easy. It requires a habituation process where you're doing stuff, very specific stuff, over and over and over again. And if you can't do that, you can't create chemistry. And if you can't create chemistry, you will be like 99% of the men out there. They just go there and.
But do you need to be 6'11" and look like an Adonis? Because that's what he's saying, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less. And that is just it's a big misconception for sure. However, I do understand his way of thinking, because if you're going to have a bunch of men that doesn't know how to create chemistry, passive value has more of importance than and significantly more importance, because if you're going to take two guys and both of them cannot really have a conversation with women that influence her, then those two guys, one of them are really, really handsome, and the other guy is just the average bloke. Yes.
Yeah.
The difference between the handsome man and the average bloke is that much, actually. I think so, really. I think it's that much, because we're coming from a perspective that none of them can talk. Yeah, but it is a big difference. However, if those two men learn how to communicate with a girl in a proper way and can really influence her in the conversation, the gap we just decreases like this. It will be like there is still a difference, but very much less, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, we haven't got time. This isn't a sort of stream about, is it all about looks kind of thing, because that's been done many times before. But I mean, the reality is, you've had clients. I know you've had clients who are very good looking guys, and they suck with women, right? So it wasn't just a question of them being good looking and also being indifferent. Like, there had to be more to it than that, right?
Absolutely, 100%. Because when you start, so even those handsome men, when they start engaging with women that have a lot of male attention, it's not enough to just look good and have a lot of passive value. I mean, that has its place, but there's so much other things that
you've got to say something when you walk up to them. That's the bottom line. I've been out many times with guys who are very good looking, and they go up and talk to the girl, and then they freeze when they're in front of the girl. And yes, I mean, sometimes maybe she likes him anyway and she gives him a chance, but for the most part, not really. I mean, she's just like, okay, this guy's a flannel, and she's on to the next one, right? So you've got to bring something to the table in terms of conversation, and this is why. I agree with you, Michael, that conversation is the fundamental key, really. I mean, I would also say, there's a lot of talk on these, on all Red Pill channels about, money, muscles, game and all of that. And yeah, it's great. I mean, obviously, look as good as you possibly can. Go to the gym. Get your style in order. Go get your finances. Like, all of these things are important. There's no point, like, nobody's saying, well, maybe they are, I don't know, but I think none of us are really saying, just be an unshaven alcoholic on the street, and then you're like, you shamble. I mean, obviously, get yourself up as good as you can, but at the same time, in the end, the great leveler really is the conversation, isn't it? Because whether you're a multimillionaire with a Bugatti or you're some guy in an average job, both of them are going to have to walk up to the girl. They're going to have a conversation, and what happens in that conversation is key in terms of generating attraction.
Absolutely, we had a lot of millionaires as the clients as well, and I know how they think. I can feel a little bit like they put all their cards on passive value, and it doesn't they don't get anywhere with it. They really struggle, so they reach out, and I can definitely see their problem. So there are guys out there where most of the men think that, oh, that guy should never have any problem with that woman or women in general. And then when we going and analyze that part, we can see like, yeah, but he does have problem with women. We've seen it so many times. So our first impression is not, it can be a big misconception actually when it comes to women.
Yeah. So Jay says,
or guys being good with women.
Yeah. So Jay says sometimes women don't like the tone of your voice and will discriminate against you, and your game is halted. Well, yeah, that's true, but that's why I said, like, there are some women that you're just, whatever you do, it's just not going to work, and they are going to disqualify you for some reason. I mean, I still believe the old thing. There are yes girls, there are no girls, and there are maybe girls, and a lot of girls you meet are just going to be no girls for whatever reason. I mean, maybe you're just like blatantly just completely not her type. Or maybe, she's got a boyfriend, or she's, whatever, right? And they're just, there's very little you can do in those instances. Maybe she doesn't like your voice, right? Fine. So, but putting those to one side, because everybody's going to come up against those. We're not really bothered. We're not concerned with those women. We're concerned with the ones who are somewhere in the middle, who are like, yeah, okay, he's all right. I'll give, and they're undecided. Those are the ones we want to influence. And then Dretch Zone is made a load of comments which I didn't really I don't really entirely understand. Some girls can be as inconsiderate as some boys, Jay, which is true. Troy Francis is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Well, I mean, Mr. Silk.
I agree.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Right. The way a person looks at you says a lot, kind of. Yeah, I guess so. Roger says, I knew David D very well. I used to work with him back in the day. Well, that's interesting. What was he like? Okay. Then he says, D. Dretchone says, the dysmorphologies itself in the word funny could divert that style into blasé. Jay says, Mr. Francis, Mr. Silk, sounds distant, but many women are seeking the perfect man who has barely come out of the oven. They want him perfect. Well, I'm available. It's hard to crack the woman code, indeed. Comfort involves not being predicted or caged. Quite simple, just shaky grounds. So now Jay now says, and I think this is referring to the client you were talking about. I think this is referring to the story you told about a client. He says the reason the lady liked him was because he was beautiful, period, even though he was boring. The client you said was boring. So Jay is positing that the reason that the girl liked him was just because he was beautiful. He was good looking, even though he was boring.
Yeah, but then we have a person that actually went to 2 boot camps and he spent a lot of money and was completely in desperation because he doesn't know how to handle the girls in general. And he got a lot of, I will not mention his name here, but he got a lot of blown out. He got a lot of dates that didn't lead to anywhere. And he was so desperate that he basically saved all his money to go to us for a boot camp and really try to sort these things out. And he had been to several boot camps before, and then he didn't really find the answer. And I could see immediately where he's lacking on. And I mean,
was he beautiful?
I would say that he was pretty average bloke. He's nothing out of the ordinary, for sure.
Jay's making it sound like some Michelangelo painting or something. He's like, oh
yeah, sort of
the statue of David or something.
Yeah, but after he went through with this conversational training, it was not until then he could pull things off. He couldn't do it before.
Yeah,
and by the way, he was scared to go to a date. He was very scared. He don't know what to say. He's scared that he's going to be boring. He doesn't really have some kind of framework to lay back on. And I mean, he was just a scared person, really. He just didn't know what to do, and that is what we're going to give him. And he's coming from the wrong perspective.
There's a lot of there's a lot of misconceptions with this looks thing. There really is, and I often think actually a lot of the guys who are writing this stuff in the comments, it always feels like they don't really get out of the house enough. Do you know what I mean? It feels like they're just repeating other stuff that they've read in comment sections or they've heard from other people's, black pill channels and things like this, and they're just regurgitating it, and they don't go out and test the hypothesis enough. Now, that's not to say, yes, of course, people then go to extremes with their examples. So are you saying if a fucking, Dolce & Gabbana male model walks in, the girls wouldn't look at it? I mean, come on. Yeah, obviously. But most people fall somewhere in the middle. Yes, I mean, there are some very, very good looking guys, but equally, I've taught very good looking guys, and their charisma is not good. Their ability to have a conversation is not good. And so they don't actually get very good results. I've also taught guys who are sort of, let's say, average kind of dudes, but their conversation skills are really good and they've had above average results. So, I mean, yeah, of course there's going to be outliers. I mean, there's the super good looking guy and maybe the girl passes her phone number because I mean, that shit happens. Of course, nobody's denying that. But in the main, really a lot of this stuff does come down to how you interact on a one-on-one basis with the woman that you're interested in. And good-looking guys have to do that as well as average guys. And good-looking guys can fuck it up with women by not having the conversational skills down. Say conversational skills, the charisma skills, however you want to dress it up. But, yeah. So Mr. Dretchone says reciprocation of the interest is a factor. The female morphology is a group of individuals. I think he's smoking some. I think he's smoking some of the exotic cigarettes. So Roger says it's true to an extent. Women young and at college, uni give the guy with looks the easy time, But if the guy has the talking skills, chemistry provoking skills, also he will completely ace the game. Well, I remember one time. So, I mean, I see this kind of stuff all the time. But I remember once I was in Ibiza, you know, the party island, and I was at the beach club, and I remember this guy, and he was talking to this girl. She was South American, I think. She was absolutely drop dead gorgeous, maybe Brazilian or whatever. And he was standing there for ages chatting to this girl. And at the end, he got her phone number and everything. And I remember, and this guy, he was kind of average sort of Aussie dude. He was nothing special to look at. I think he was a little bit, you know, had a little bit of a belly or whatever. And the girl, he got the phone number. The girl walked off, and he'd been talking to her for ages, like half an hour, and she was laughing and, you know, whatever, you know, kind of really, really vibing with him. And I remember after he finished, some guys walked up. A couple of guys walked up to him, like good-looking guys, like ripped guys, walked up to him and said, "How the fuck did you do? What were you doing? How did you do that?" And he was just saying, "Oh, well, I just, you know, whatever, you know," explaining his method. But that's the thing. And I've seen this stuff so many times. And this is not even talking about my game skills or anything like that. This is just observing other people, where the guy who's got the ability to talk and the guy who's got the ability to hold the attention of the women is the guy who tends to get the most favorable outcome. You know, the super good looking dudes with the six packs who are standing by the bar, not talking to anybody. I mean, yeah, they might get, you know, they might get the odd, probably not very attractive girl coming and throwing themselves at them. But for the most part, it's the dudes who are putting themselves out there and who have the conversation skills who are actually getting the results. And that was in a club environment as well. This isn't a day game thing. This was in a sort of like a daytime beach bar club thing. So, I mean, you must have seen this kind of thing all the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. For sure. Because, okay. I mean, okay, go ahead. We answer the next question, perhaps.
Yeah, dude. Young women find Jeffrey Dahmer hot, and I don't think his chemistry is the same. Is the same you're talking about? I mean, what do you even say to that? I mean, look, we're going around in circles here because we have said already that say looks. Yes, it does have looks are not complete. We're not saying looks are irrelevant. Yes, looks do have an effect. However, I still think, I mean, and actually, when you talk about psychopaths and you talk about people who are, you know, and again, I'm not going to be selling a course on Jeffrey Dahmer game here anytime soon, but I mean, you know, these people tend to be superficially charismatic. These people tend to have what you might call riz, you know. Yeah. So I think, look, there's a lot of nuances here, but in general, the bottom line of it is, whether you're good looking or not, you're going to have to sit down and have a conversation with this woman, okay? And how good your conversation skills are, in many cases, is going to be a big differentiator in terms of what success.
Oh, there's 100%. There's 100%. I mean, there's no question about it. I would like to put lots of. We have to put it into categories, basically, Troy. I mean, and I don't think people fully understand the extent of it, but we have to put two people in different categories. Guys that can have conversation that with influence, and then the rest of the dudes, basically, and then it's like two different worlds, basically, two different worlds, because we are talking about brain chemistry here, basically. I mean, we're talking about complicated brain chemistry, because chemistry, as defined as what they are talking about here, like having a feel with the girl or the girl having a feel with you, is based on chemical reactions in the brain. If you don't know how to,
by what you say,
absolutely. And once you trigger the girl in that kind of way, she have that kind of feeling. She feels in a certain way when she have dopamine release, number one, endorphins, oxytocin release, and then she start really getting engaged with you in the conversation.
Yeah,
I mean, we are taking that part. And then we're going to compare that part with people that cannot really do it. How does it look then with guys that are really good looking, or guys that have high status, or just the average bloke? How would that look? What can they do in order to spark those chemical reactions in the brain in the same way as the skillful conversationalist? That is the difference. You see, it's two different kind of worlds, basically. So the one cannot really be compared with the other in that sense. I just, from my perspective, I just believe that conversational skills that can influence is just a completely different world, basically. It's not even comparable. And with that said, as you said in the beginning, is under the conclusion that the guy is not a homeless dude living on the park bench in Central Park or something like that. He's not out of the ordinary, like outside the box thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be a sort of, we're assuming here that you're falling into the sort of regular boundaries of being sort of a, decently presentable guy, but it's not necessarily about being a male model. So Roger says, David D'Angelo was very upbeat, always positive, but he got fed up in the end with the space or the manosphere or whatever you want to call it. Well, fair enough. You can't blame him for that, really, can you? Jay says, what about men going to hypnosis after hitting and fixing their minds? Then they can have a better time with women. Hypnosis needs to happen. Well, I mean, I don't know what you feel about hypnosis, Michael. I mean, there are some guys actually in the space. There's a guy called Ryan Christensen. Who does hypnosis for men. I think his channel was called Hypnosis for Men. I've worked with him in the past, and there's another guy as well called Ryan Fowler who also does hypnosis. So there are people who do hypnosis. It's definitely something, give it a go if you think it could help. And then the OTT says, I think black pillars do go out because so he's identifying himself as a black pillar, because we see couples in the same age group, unlike the red pill world where they believe 36-year-old men are walking down the streets with 19-year-old college girls. Oh, all right. Well, look, this is getting into a slightly different subject area here, which is this thing about, I think he's getting into this thing about age gaps, or at least this perception that men tend to do better in their 30s or as they get older. So, I mean, that's not really what we're talking about here, to be honest. But I've just, for my 2 penneth worth on this, I've noticed quite a lot of pushback in the space recently of guys going, "Oh, this is all bullshit that men in their 30s or older guys, get better at dating, and it's better for guys in their 20s because 20s are in their prime and blah blah blah." I mean, I for me that's just nonsense. I mean, for me, like, and for pretty much, I think every dude that I know, they have, certainly in their 30s, certainly after passing the age of 30, dating has become easier for them, and they've also got high quality women. That was 100% the case for me. And there's no cap. I mean, this isn't just, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. It's just like, my 20s were pretty fucking disastrous for dating. Now, being transparent, a lot of that was to do with the fact I had zero game because I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing. But my 20s were, my later 20s were good. I started to get sort of better at it. But when I got into my 30s, things really started to take off. That was just me. And I'm not going to make the case that, oh, yeah, and in your 40s it's even better. And then when you're 50, dude, that's, obviously there's diminishing returns. But I certainly think, the idea that it's only guys in their 20s who are killing it with this stuff, I just think is false. I don't see any evidence for that whatsoever. But again, I'm sure Michael would say, well, what this comes down to is less age, and it's more, what are you doing in terms of these conversations?
Absolutely, it's still the fundamentals. So It doesn't matter if you're 20 or if you're 40. I mean, 90, it's all about the conversation.
If you're 19, you've got good conversation skills. You're going to be slaying.
Okay. Right.
So lame duck. How about imagining the beautiful girl is an ugly girl and proceed on that basis? Well, I think you've got to treat them all the same, basically. So there's something in. And by the way, sorry, Mike, time's getting on a little bit, so we can rush through these.
Okay. No, but I mean, I don't like that idea of pretending the girl to be a man, or pretending the girl to be a friend, or pretending the girl to be an ugly girl. I think that it just want to mess with your nervous system, because you try to fool your nervous system in that sense. So it's better sometimes to have, as Troy say, you treat all the girls in the same way, and you project the power of curiosity. You utilize the curiosity part. So it doesn't matter if it's like a super beautiful girl or just an average girl. You're going to utilize the power of curiosity. So what does that mean? Right. You're going to be curious about her, and then that's it. That is how you're going to shift your mindset from your own self-awareness towards her and give her your undivided attention. That's the main part.
You're putting the focus on her rather than on your thinking, oh my God, she's so hot. It's like, that's not the focus. The focus is on her and what makes her tick and what's interesting about her.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then Jay, again, it's not about ability. It's about special chemistry that you connect, something the universe gave you. Hard to explain, but it's real. Well, I mean, again, sometimes yes, but other times you've got to give chemistry a helping hand, and that's what we're talking about here. It's the skill set. Max says, I find it hard putting myself out there because I'm no longer in the college environment. I've lost past friends due to time. I have no real way to know how to put myself out there at the moment. Well, I mean, I would say every time you walk out the house, you're putting yourself out there, right? Because there's probably, I don't know where you live, but there's probably women around, right? I mean, every time I walk out, I see women that I could potentially have a conversation with, whether it's in the grocery store, in the dry cleaners, in the coffee shop, whatever. So it's not really that hard unless you live in the middle of nowhere. And if you do, then you probably need to move.
Yeah, but it's also like this approach anxiety part as well, I believe, what he's trying to,
yes,
indirectly say here. And I do believe that if he will be able to put himself out there and start and engage a conversation, he needs to have some kind of a conversational framework to start with. Like, okay, so what should my mindset be? And how can I get away from this anxiety? And once I see that girl, what is my main goal? The main goal is to find out about her. That is the main goal to start with. If you start to think that I'm going to make something fun so she will laugh, or I will try to make her impressed about something I do, then you're completely in the wrong area.
Yeah.
The only main focus you want to have is to be absolutely curious about her, and then focus your questions and your answers and your active listening towards her. And when you're having a conversation with her, it's you and her talking about her. That's the key point. And once you have that in your brain, you can overcome anxiety.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, when you're listening to this, if you're interested in working with Michael, okay, if you're interested in working with Mr. Silk on this stuff and to upskill in this area, drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, and we can get on a call and we can have a conversation about it, because this is some really valuable stuff here. We're just getting through some of the rest of these. Some women on dating apps have said to me, I don't think we are the right fit just because I haven't replied in a couple of seconds. What's that all about?
Oh my, what can I say?
Dating apps are pretty shit, really, to be honest. I mean, dating apps are shit for everybody, really, for the most part. I mean, I think, use the dating apps if you want in the background, but really, if you're practicing this stuff, you're going out and having conversations on a regular basis, you're going to be getting results through that, and you're going to be getting better results, to be frank. Troy Francis, why are guys getting chased off pods or wrecked in debates, but drama never finds? I never see hit pieces on nonsense on your end. Seeing lots of L's, but you seem to avoid it all. Well done. Yeah, well, I mean, I've had my share of hit pieces and stuff like that. I mean, but I try not to get involved with drama too much, because I think it's important. This is about helping people. It's not about drama and internet nonsense. Have you seen Beauty in the Eye of the Beholder? Have you seen an unattractive man with a 9? Yes, many times in Russia and Eastern Europe. Question for Michael: how can I approach a group of girls and then hit on one specifically?
Well, I mean, what I can say here to start with is, like, when you're approaching a group of girls or a group of people in general, you have to engage the whole group. And the key part here is to engage the group and start asking them questions that is from a genuine standpoint. So if you ask them, hey guys, I'm very curious, do you think that this is the best club around this town, or do you recommend something else? And then suddenly they will start giving you advices. And once they start giving you advices, you're just going to acknowledge those you're not interested in. It's like, okay, thank you. And how about you? Oh, thank you. And how about you? And now you're talking to the girls that you're interested in. And whatever she says, whatever comes out from her mouth, you take the keywords, bam, and you see clarity and meaning of those keywords. That is how you engage a true conversation with her, but not the rest of the group. So to illustrate the example again, as I mentioned before, if I ask 3 girls what they think about Warsaw, and one girl says, "Oh, I think it's cool," I will just say, "Okay, nice. How about you?" The other girl say, "Yeah, I think it's beautiful and I like it here." Okay, and then the third girl is the girl that I'm really interested in. She will say that, "I think it's exciting and I enjoy the city." Bam! I take the 2 keywords. Or I just going to choose the keywords or the key phrase, I enjoy the city. I will just ask the girl a follow-up question. When you say, I enjoy the city, help me to understand that part better. Now I get into the girl I'm interested in to depth and engage in a real conversation with her particularly, while the other two I just acknowledged the answers and moved on. So that is how you're doing in order to select that particular girl out from the group.
Yes.
Does it make sense?
Absolutely. Okay, well, look, I think we're coming to the end of these now. Mr. Francis, should English men start dating Russian women due to the 9 women dating with Pinocchio? Yes. Yes, or Slavic women in general. Are Polish women related to Slavic women? Are specific genetics, are they?
I think there are like mixed genetics. I think because Poland has such a complicated history, so they just mix with everything. Even out of Asia, they're mixed with. But I do believe that I think they are like 50% Slavic, or maybe even more, 60%, and the rest of the 40% can be mixed, so to speak.
Yeah. And then Jay says, I think men should visit Poland and Russia. Well, maybe not Russia now, but their love lives can grow in terms of love. Well, what a beautiful sentiment to end this on. Yeah, all right, guys. Well, look, it's been a great stream as always. Thanks, Michael, for coming on. I know it's very late for you. It's quite late here as well, but it's later for you. If anybody wants to work with Michael in terms of improving your conversational skills or really understanding this whole framework and learning this framework so that you can go and talk to women and not be worried about, okay, what am I going to say to her next? Or am I going to run out of things to say? Drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com. and we can discuss it and we can jump on a call. But I mean, Michael, did you want to say anything else in closing?
Well, all I can say is that if you can manage to have a conversation that influences her brain chemistry, you're in the right route of making something happen.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, you will be in the uphill battle with women for sure. That is absolutely true. And I can also tell you this one is there is a saying that says we tend to like people that like us, and being curious towards a person, showing that you like that person, and that in return make them like you a lot more. So we actually comprehending the power of we tend to like people that like us. And it's quite fun because when it comes to girls, if they smile to a guy, he will like her immediately. But if we smile back to the same girl, she will not have the same perception as you have. We need to do more to create the feeling of we tend to like people that like us. It's a very strong psychological statement. So basically, that's all I wanted to say today.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, as I said, if you want to work with Michael, or if you've got any queries or questions about anything that we've said, just drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com. and we can arrange a call. We can jump on a call, myself and Michael, Mr. Silk, and we can talk things through with you. And yeah, thanks for joining me on the stream as always. And we'll be back with some more content soon. But see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.